The steam still rises from the cast iron pot, thick and acrid, filling the cramped kitchen with the smell of lye and something else, something that shouldn't be there. In this modest home in Correggio, Italy, 1940, investigators stare into a bathtub where congealed blood has formed a dark crimson skin across the surface. On the stove, human fat bubbles and pops like cooking oil. Scattered across a wooden table lie fragments of bone, some still glistening, others dried white as chalk. And they're sitting innocuously on the windowsill, bars of pale, waxy soap cure in the afternoon light. The townspeople gather outside, their voices rising in disbelief. How could their neighbor, the woman who brought them fresh bread and helped deliver their babies, be capable of this? The questions multiply like shadows at dusk. Where are the bodies? What happened to those 3 women who simply vanished? When investigators finally cornered 56-year-old Leonarda Cianciulli in her kitchen that October day, surrounded by the grotesque evidence of her crimes, they demanded answers. Her response chilled them to the bone. She didn't deny anything. She didn't cry or plead innocence. When they asked where the bodies were, she simply pointed to the soap dish.
This is the horrifying true story of Italy's forgotten female monster.
The year is 1893, and in the poverty-stricken hills of Montella, a child enters the world already marked by darkness. Leonarda Cianciulli's mother, bitter and resentful at another mouth to feed, performs what she believes will be protective magic, a black ritual conducted during pregnancy designed to shield the unborn child from evil. Instead, it plants the seed of a different kind of evil entirely. Young Leonarda grows up believing she's cursed, and the evidence seems to support this terrible conviction. Suicide attempts begin when she's barely a teenager. Fortune tellers, palm readers, and village wise women all deliver the same chilling prophecy. Prison or the asylum await her. One fortune teller's prediction haunts her most. In your right hand, I see prison. In your left, a criminal asylum. The superstitions of rural Italy seep into her bones like winter cold. Every black cat, every broken mirror, every spilled salt becomes an omen. She learns to read signs in everything. The way birds fly, the patterns of tea leaves, the alignment of stars. Her mother's resentment feeds this obsession, constantly reminding Leonarda that she was unwanted, that darkness follows her footsteps. This psychological torment doesn't just shape her worldview, it becomes the foundation for something far more sinister. In her mind, fate isn't something you accept, it's something you fight. And sometimes, that fight requires sacrifice. Marriage brings Leonarda to Correggio in 1917, carrying hope for a new beginning. Instead, tragedy compounds tragedy. Pregnancies end in miscarriage after miscarriage. The children who do survive infancy often die young from illness, poverty, and the harsh realities of early 20th century Italy. Each loss drives her deeper into the world of superstition and magical thinking. When her eldest son, Giuseppe, receives his conscription notice for World War II, Leonarda's carefully constructed world threatens to collapse entirely. Her surviving children represent everything she has left, her purpose, her legacy, her only victory against a fate that seems determined to destroy her. The astrology charts she obsessively studies offer no comfort. The omens grow darker. Local fortune tellers confirm her worst fears. Death stalks her family. In her twisted logic, only blood sacrifice can appease whatever malevolent forces pursue them. She begins to believe that taking life might be the only way to preserve it. The planning begins methodically, carefully. This won't be random violence born of madness. This will be sacred work, maternal duty elevated to ritual. Faustina Seri enters Leonardo's web like a moth drawn to flame. The 50-year-old spinster has spent her entire life alone, desperate for love, vulnerable to anyone offering hope of romance. Leonarda presents herself as a friend, a confidant, someone who understands the loneliness of a woman's heart. "I know a man who would be perfect for you," Leonarda whispers over afternoon tea. "But you must be discreet. Meet me tomorrow evening and I'll tell you everything." That evening, Faustina arrives at Leonarda's kitchen carrying dreams of finally finding love. Instead, she finds drugged wine and a woman who has crossed a line from which there's no return. After Faustina collapses, unconscious, Leonarda takes up an axe. The methodical dismemberment that follows reveals a disturbing attention to detail. Leonarda drains the blood carefully, saving every drop. She strips away flesh, separates fat from muscle, and sorts bones by size. Nothing is wasted. The fat goes into her soap-making pot, mixed with caustic soda and perfumed oils. The blood becomes an ingredient in her tea cakes, dark, rich pastries that she'll later serve to unsuspecting neighbors. As she works through the night, something fundamental shifts inside Leonarda Cianciulli. The act of killing hasn't horrified her, it's fulfilled her. She feels powerful, purposeful, connected to forces greater than herself. Killing has become sacred work, and she's just begun. One murder creates the template. What follows is ritualistic refinement. Leonarda develops a grotesque routine that transforms butchery into ceremony. Each victim must be selected carefully. Not random targets, but women whose disappearances won't immediately raise suspicions. Lonely women, women with few connections, women society might not miss right away. She perfects her methods with disturbing precision. The blood must be collected while still warm for the tea cakes to have the proper consistency. The fat renders best at specific temperatures, creating soap that's smooth and pale. Even the bones serve a purpose, ground into meal for her pastries or dissolved entirely in acid. Perhaps most chilling of all, she begins writing letters in her victim's handwriting, mailing them to family members days or weeks later. "I found love," these forgeries claim. "I'm traveling with my new husband. Don't worry about me." The deception bites her time and deflects suspicion. The second victim, Francesca Suavi, believes she's found employment in a distant town. The third, a singing instructor named Virginia Cacioppo, thinks she's being offered a position with an opera company in Florence. Each woman arrives at Leonarda's kitchen carrying suitcases and dreams, never suspecting they're walking into a charnel house. With each murder, the ritual deepens. Leonarda begins to see herself not as a killer, but as a high priestess, offering flesh to fate itself. Every bar of soap she creates, every tea cake she bakes, represents a protective charm, a magical barrier between her son and the war that threatens to claim him. The crimes become disturbingly methodical, almost industrial in their efficiency. But such precision, such overconfidence, inevitably leads to mistakes. Virginia Cacioppo's disappearance doesn't vanish into silence like the others. The aspiring opera singer has connections, a sister in the music world, friends who expect regular contact, a life that can't simply evaporate without questions being asked. When Virginia fails to appear for scheduled performances, when her letters stop coming, when inquiries to the supposed opera company reveal no record of her employment, suspicion finally turns toward the last person known to have seen her alive, the helpful widow from Correggio who'd arranged her dream job. Police arrive at Leonarda's door on a crisp October morning in 1940. They expect to conduct a routine interview to eliminate a witness from their inquiries. Instead, they discover a woman who seems almost relieved to be caught, eager to discuss her work in disturbing detail. The search of her home reveals the full scope of her crimes. That foul smell leading to the vat of human remains, the soap curing on windowsills, the remaining tea cakes in her pantry. Evidence of a mind that had transformed murder into craft, horror into holy work. When confronted with the evidence, Leonarda doesn't deny her actions. Instead, she begins to explain them, describing her methods with the pride of an artisan discussing her trade. Word spreads through Italy like wildfire, carried by newspapers hungry for sensation and a public desperate for distraction from the war raging across Europe. The case has everything that captures the imagination: witchcraft, cannibalism, a grandmother turned monster. Headlines scream about the soap maker of Correggio and the cannibal widow. Local reactions split along troubling lines. Some neighbors refuse to believe the accusations, remembering Leonarda as generous and kind, always ready to help with births, deaths, and daily troubles. Others recall strange smells from her kitchen, odd comments about fate and sacrifice, an intensity that now seems sinister in hindsight. The press coverage becomes increasingly sensational, transforming Leonarda from a disturbed woman into a figure of legend. Stories spread about her recipes, blood and tea, bones and cakes, fat and soap, becoming urban myths that will persist for decades. The case tears away Italy's polite veneer, revealing the superstitions and dark beliefs that lurk beneath modern civilization. Photographers capture crowds gathering outside her home, their faces a mix of horror and fascination. The story goes international, shocking a world already numbed by the industrial-scale violence of global war. Italy's polite society had cracked open, revealing something ancient and terrible underneath. In her cell, Leonarda Cianciulli displays no remorse, only pride in her craftsmanship. When investigators question her about the murders, she corrects their assumptions about her methods with the patience of a teacher instructing slow students. The pot was exactly the right temperature, she explains matter-of-factly. Too hot and the fat burns. Too cool and it doesn't render properly. I learned soap making from my grandmother, you see. She taught me that quality requires attention to detail. Her confessions read like cookbook instructions. She describes measuring caustic soda, timing the rendering process, even adding cologne to mask odors. When asked about the blood tea cakes, she grows animated, discussing proper consistency and baking temperatures. No part of them was wasted, she tells the stunned investigators. That would have been disrespectful. They died for a purpose, to protect my son. Their sacrifice couldn't be meaningless. To Leonarda, none of this represents murder in any conventional sense. This is maternal duty, elevated to religious obligation, the desperate act of a mother willing to do anything at all, to keep her child safe. Her tone throughout remains eerily maternal, as though she were discussing meal preparation rather than the systematic dismemberment of 3 human beings. The trial begins in 1946 in Reggio Emilia, where Leonarda faces judges, prosecutors, and a courtroom packed with journalists from across Europe. The proceedings reveal the full scope of her crimes, but also the tragic psychology that drove them. Her defense attempts to argue insanity, pointing to her history of mental illness, suicide attempts, and delusional thinking. The prosecution counters with evidence of premeditation, methodical planning, and the calculated deception used to cover her tracks. Leonarda herself seems almost indifferent to the legal proceedings, more interested in correcting misstatements about her methods than in defending her actions. When the verdict comes, guilty on 3 counts of murder, she accepts it with the same matter-of-fact calm she's displayed throughout. The sentence fulfills the fortune teller's prophecy with chilling precision: 30 years in prison, followed by 3 years in a criminal asylum. As she's led away, reporters note that she shows no emotion, no recognition that justice has been served. Whispers follow her into incarceration. Were there really only 3 victims? Other disappearances in the area remain unsolved. Some investigators suspect the true number might be higher, that other women might have vanished into Leonarda's grotesque ritual without anyone noticing. She dies in 1970, her story already fading into the realm of folklore and urban legend. The legacy of Leonarda Cianciulli defies easy categorization. She wasn't a mindless killer driven by rage or greed. She wasn't a psychopath who murdered for pleasure. Instead, she represents something more disturbing: a methodical, ritualistic murderer whose crimes sprang from a toxic combination of superstition, maternal obsession, and the desperate belief that sacrifice could control fate. Her actions revealed the dangerous power of magical thinking when combined with genuine desperation. In her mind, every drop of blood, every rendered pound of fat, every ground bone served a sacred purpose. The soap didn't just clean bodies, it cleansed destiny itself. The psychological profile that emerges from her case study continues to fascinate criminologists and psychiatrists decades later. How does a woman who spent her life helping others, delivering babies, caring for the sick, providing comfort to the grieving, transform into someone capable of such calculated horror? Perhaps the answer lies in the fundamental human desire to protect those we love, taken to its absolute extreme. Leonarda believed that her evil had a purpose, that her sins could purchase salvation for her children. In her final interview before her death, she remained unrepentant, even proud. "I gave them a clean death, and my son lived." Even now, more than 80 years later, it remains unclear what's more terrifying: the methodical brutality of what Leonarda Cianciulli did, or the maternal love that convinced her it was not only necessary but right.